All right. We are now ready for Adam, who is under no pressure after following up Brad Anderson. I'm going to get him going here. And there we go. Adam doesn't know this, but I've muted him about 12 times today. So hopefully I'll keep my finger off of it this time.
What's up, D?
Okay, Adam, you are live. You are good to go. Take it away, my friend.
Holy guacamole. Well, I hope to make everybody's brain spin just a little bit more than it probably already is today. We've had an amazing pile of content, and I'm hoping I can add to it here. So hi, I'm Adam Gross. I live in Houston, and so I'm part of the Texas group. So they asked me to represent for us. So yeah, heavy burden there. I'm a recently added Microsoft MVP for enterprise mobility, and I also am a desktop analyst, config manager consultant, and a blog, and also have a beard. So got some info on the side here. We'll share out the slide deck later. So you've probably seen me on various online forums and things. So all right, so I'm gonna try to cram as much information into this as possible. So we're going to jump around just a little bit. So first I'm gonna show you how to install Microsoft Connected Cache in your config manager environment. You may have heard this called DOINC before, delivery optimization in network cache. And so I'll go through a quick demo to get that started, and hopefully we can revisit that at the end. Then I'm going to talk through kind of our experience, my experience with all the things we've been able to implement in the config manager space and Intune space as a result of COVID and working from home. And then we'll go through some Power BI and just data content related things. So talking about validating the data the things that we're turning on in config manager, specifically looking at work from home scenarios. So is our clients really pulling data from where we told them to pull it from? So I will get started here. So poured one out for the demo gods earlier, so we'll see how this goes. So I'm switching over to my virtual environment, and where are we? So my config manager, wow, my start menu is covering it up, so it's already messing me up here. Okay, so inside of my config manager console, I'm simply going to go into my site servers, and I've built up a new virtual machine. A new distribution point. That's better. There we go. Now I can get to the bar down here. Okay, so I'm going to go select my distribution point, and you simply I promise I'll have some more actual discussion before we go into this. So I'm just jumping in this to just walk you through how to enable the Microsoft Connected Cache, and we want to revisit this and see if it actually worked in the end. So it's just on a distribution point, you add this role, so enable the Microsoft Connected Cache server, and we want to specify the drive that it's going to use and the minimum disk space that it needs to have on that server in order to work. And that's it. That's how you enable Microsoft Connected Cache. I will come back to that, so let's just put that on the back burner. And so now let's start over. So in the beginning, pre-COVID, so BC, before COVID, thank you, Sean, for that one. So BC, our environment had Config Manager 1909, and we had just, with our 1909 upgrade, we had enabled full HTTPS using our PKI environment. We chose to go full PKI because we were looking at doing moving our MBAM management into Config Manager using their BitLocker management features. And at the time, or I think still somewhat, it required HTTPS to be on the site servers. And so we said, let's just go ahead and do it wholesale across on these things, because it's only just going to be beneficial for other features that exist. Enhanced HTTP works for most of the other things, most of the other features, but it doesn't hurt having this. What's great about the way that Config Manager is built is that it it can use multiple authentication methods, and it will use the most restrictive first and then loosen up until it reaches the requirement that you have set for your environment. We enabled, so we had that enabled. We also had branch cache enabled, and we have 2 super peers. So our environment has about 7,000 workstations, 9,000 total devices that we manage in Config Manager. We also enabled LEDBAT, which that's just the easy one. Just go turn it on. It's awesome. We had desktop analytics, delivery optimization, or so we thought. And we had also begun piloting co-management. So we had slid the sliders, and we had our machines already syncing to Intune, just not actually being managed in Intune with co-management. So then lockdown happened, and it really became an all hands on deck situation for us. Our whole global, so my team, I'm on the enterprise desktop team. Our team is part of IT global infrastructure, and global infrastructure was responsible for many new initiatives right away. And it involved, things like, okay, now we need to put VPN clients on desktops because we don't have laptops for all the users that need them. About 50, we have a 50-50 split between desktops and laptops, but we're a manufacturing company, so some portion of our devices are just sitting in a facility running manufacturing equipment and aren't necessarily end user devices. But that was a challenge, trying to figure out, well, how do we send hardware home to users and that sort of things. So sorted that out, ordered, I think we spent like $70,000 at the Microsoft store buying Surfaces one day to be able to hand those out. So, but we didn't have autopilots, we're just still doing imaging. So we had to be on, I wasn't, some people had to be on site getting those things out the door. And then right away, we teamed the enterprise. We had already been piloting, my team had been using it for quite some time. And so within probably a month, we had rolled out Teams to the enterprise, and the adoption rate has been amazing. My boss has been sending out stats on it weekly, and it just worked. So glad that I can finally do phone calls there instead of through Skype. So then we jumped on the upgrade to 2002 for Config Manager. We did the fast ring because we wanted to enable our clients to get content from Microsoft and the over split tunneling, but there was a bug that prevented Office updates from being able to pull from Microsoft on previous releases. So the fix was introduced in 2002, so we wanted to jump on that, and we did it. And this is our first fast ring that we did, and I gotta say, it worked pretty well. We still had to put the hot fix on afterwards because we did experience some of the issues that the hot fix fixed, but there was nothing catastrophic, and the Config Manager team's just fantastic. This stuff just works. Then while we were there, I went ahead and slipped in tenant attach, because why not? Jason demonstrated a little bit earlier on doing tenant attach, and we kind of followed the model of using we put it in pilot. So I just made a new collection, but then over time we will drop all of our devices into the tenant attach collection. But then that lets us slowly move them in instead of having an on or off for the whole environment until we feel comfortable with it. We also enabled VPN split tunneling. We had been fighting with the security and networking teams for quite some time to get this, to just ask for this, and they never were interested. And then with Teams and Office 365's requirements, just things needed to be different and better. We use a Palo Alto Global Protect client for VPN, so it's got an always-on machine channel, and we needed, we just needed split tunneling. And so everyone, it was really an awesome team effort. Everybody came to the table and made it happen. And while we did that, we enabled split tunneling for Office, for Teams, for all of the Microsoft update traffic. And then we said, well, hey, while we're here, if we're doing this, then now we have a use case for the Cloud Management Gateway. Prior to this, with always-on VPN and no internet-only devices, Cloud Management Gateway never made any sense for us. But with split tunneling, now it works because you can be connected to VPN and still go out to the Cloud Management Gateway which is it's acting as a cloud distribution point to pull content from there. We also enabled the Microsoft Connected Cache, or DOINC. which I just did in the lab. So we'll check back on that. And then I was able to successfully start building out our a lab environment to test Autopilot, and then have actually put Autopilot policies into production that we've been able to start piloting there. We still have some challenges around SSL decryption that our firewall is doing and things like that, but our networking security folks are really being helpful, helping us work through that and really come into the table to deal with that. So some of the lessons that we learned, so the benefits kind of cover some of these, but so now we can pull our updates from Microsoft. We are doing feature updates over servicing. So if you haven't seen my blog posts or tweets about feature updates using native servicing instead of using a task sequence, you really should check it out, because this will be our second or third round of feature updates using just servicing. So just pushing them out like any other security update, and it's fantastic. It just works. And we had a deadline on the 8th, and I think we had like 1,200 devices that deadlined in the same day. And for us, that's a lot of machines. I know, talk to Gary Block, 10,000 is his pilot group. So whatever. So now our VPN clients can pull content from the Cloud Management Gateway, which means we can push more and more content out there without having it using up our VPN bandwidth. And then some of the things that we kind of ran into was there are some checkboxes you need to set on things, and we discovered that some of them weren't working properly. You need to make sure that you're assigning your Cloud Management Gateway to your VPN boundary group. And some of these I'm going to walk through here in a minute, so I'm not going to get into too much detail on them. One of the biggest things that we ran into was Cloud Management Gateway setup, and it was really largely self-induced. My server guy was working with me to implement it, and so we have a root offline CA and we have 2 intermediate CAs that are the issuing CAs. And when we were doing it, he said, "Oh, you don't need to put both intermediate certs up there. You can probably just do the one." And so we did, and kind of set it and forget it. And we were struggling some clients were working, but some weren't. And later discovered, oh, it's because some clients had certs that were issued from the CA that we didn't sync the certificate for. And so once we synced it up there, it worked. And then you've always heard it's always DNS, and it was definitely DNS for us. We chose to use an external facing DNS name for our public facing domain name to name our CMG. There's an option to use a cloudapp.net alias, and we didn't do that. And there was some challenges around the way that we handle routing of that DNS alias. So, all these things kind of to say you need to really be friends with your security and networking folks as you go through these things, because I'll talk a little bit more about SSL packet inspection too. These are definitely areas that it would be beneficial to work with those groups and partner with them to understand what controls they have in place and let them know what things you need to open up to get through it. When we were enabling the Microsoft Connected Cache, it failed on a couple of our distribution points, and we didn't really know, and we were trying to figure out why certain locations still weren't pulling cache content from the servers. And I've got a SQL command I'll show in a minute to show you how you can quickly identify the ones that aren't working yet and then be able to fix them. Right now, doing Autopilot, we are running into issues with SSL packet inspection. I think that Mike Niehaus in his session mentioned even that they're working towards trying to sort out some things around that. But packet inspection, the way I understand it, is your website is using a HTTPS and it's got a cert, and then packet inspection takes that cert and replaces it with its own cert and reassigns the traffic. Well, for a non-domain joined device, you're not trusting the cert that just got applied because it's not a public cert, and it complicates things. So, and then also overlapping boundaries. Don't do it. They break things. Okay, so let's talk about enabling your clients to pull content from different ways, and some of the options that are beneficial for specifically. My most recent focus has been on the connected cache and delivery optimization. So that I'm not going to really talk about branch cache and leadbat in this, but here they are. If you want to enable branch cache, it's just another way that your device can pull content more efficiently in your environment. But so you just go to enable a Microsoft Connected Cache server. You just follow these steps. The Microsoft Connected Cache server, if you haven't read about it, if you go check it out, the Config Manager docs talks about it. It is a, and I can show you, because this one is one. So if I go into IIS, once you've enabled it on a server, you end up seeing all of these server farms appear in your environment. And what this is you're essentially turning your on-prem distribution point into part of, or making it part of the Microsoft CDN. So now your clients, when they go to request content from an internet source, which you can enable on your boundary group, they will proxy that traffic through your Microsoft Connected Cache server, and it will download that content to itself, cache it, and then have it for any future devices that want to pull it. So that's the benefit here, is that you can tell clients to prefer cloud sources, but then don't allow them out to the internet, essentially, and so you can bring the internet on-prem and leverage the benefits of delivery optimization more effectively on premises where you previously wouldn't be able to allow those clients to go out to get content from the internet. So places where this potentially is beneficial is when you're trying to get dynamic update content and things like that as part of feature updates or features on demand. These things, you can leverage these things a little bit better. Plus, your Intune devices can also leverage your connected cache as well. So just go click it, go enable it. That's it. And the clients are just using a built-in, it's part of Windows. It's part of what your device already is doing natively out of the box. So you're just enabling a feature that lets it pull the content locally instead of having to go directly out to Microsoft to get it. So some of the boundary group options, should have two red boxes here. So if you want to enable delivery optimization peer sharing, you would check this box on your boundary group. So my suggestion is that if you have VPN boundary groups and on-premises boundary groups, you would only want to select this on your on-premises boundary groups. Otherwise, your clients potentially are going to, your VPN clients could be geographically located significant distance apart, but they would share the same subnet on the VPN, and so they would potentially attempt to share content. So you don't want to enable that option on your VPN boundary group. So do that only on your on-premises one. And then specifically for your VPN boundary groups, this option, if you have split tunneling enabled, is great because it allows your clients to check for a cloud management gateway with content or Microsoft for any Microsoft update content, and it will go out there first instead of trying to hit your local distribution point. So I would recommend not to have both of these checked on your boundary group, depending on how you've got them configured. That's my experience with it. I don't know if other folks have different opinions. But that's how we've got ours configured. So on premises, uncheck this one, check this one. On a VPN, flip them. So then branch cache, I even spelled that wrong. Still spelled it wrong, doesn't matter. Yeah, it's spelled correctly down here, just read it here. So these three help you enable branch cache. There's actually a task sequence from the guys at 2 Pint Software. They have a free task sequence that you can grab that will help you configure and enable your branch cache settings for your clients as well. And so that's in your client settings policies. If you want to enable delivery optimization, there's three different things that do different things. So number one, if you want to enable your devices that are using delivery optimization peering, you want to allow them to use your boundary group as their peer group. So you would select this option, and it will if devices share the same boundary group, then it will then those devices can share with each other. So this prevents devices from different geographical locations from potentially sharing, unless you've grouped a bunch of weird, disparate system locations into the same boundary group, which would be kind of strange. And then the second one is the new option. If you enable the connected cache server, then this allows clients to contact that connected cache for content. And then over here on the software updates setting, to use Microsoft Connected Cache servers, you also need to enable Delta downloads for this to work. And there are some limitations on what the connected cache will, what Config Manager reports on and manages as part of the connected cache. The client itself uses more content from the connected cache than the Config Manager client is actually reporting and managing for you. You can see that on the client logs and things. But so right now there's a list on the delivery optimization or the Microsoft Connected Cache site that lists all the things that will work through that today. So once you enable that, there's a registry key that gets created on the workstation. So this is just, it creates a local group policy and it configures your delivery optimization settings. And you can also configure these directly with the group policy. And so this last option is actually a group policy setting. And so this was to allow my clients to download smaller files into their cache. The default is 100 megs. So if you do manage this with group policy, make sure that you're not overlapping your policies with whatever you're configuring in Config Manager. So what you can see here is the first entry is DO cache host. So this is the name of my delivery optimization or my Microsoft Connected Cache server. The DO download mode is one of the options to allow the clients to do the group peering. And then this group ID allows, this is an ID that matches up with your boundary group to tell the client which other peers in its, which group it's a member of. So if we were to toggle some of those settings, so if we were to, on this one, we enable the client setting to allow the client to use Microsoft Connected Cache, but we disable peering on the client's boundary group, then it would look like this, where it changes the download mode to not using peers, not using groups, and then it will remove the group ID, and then vice versa. This would be where we don't have a connected cache server applied to the boundary group, but we do have group peering enabled, so they can still pull from a peer. They just won't use the server to attempt to pull. So they would actually pull from Microsoft first if a peer or they pull from a peer first, but if the peer doesn't have it, then they would pull from Microsoft to cache it. So these are the places, these are what you can look at on the client to see those settings being configured. Okay, so going to jump over into client data sources. So once you've turned all those things on, it's a question of, well, how do I prove this? How do I know that this is actually working? What do I need to do with that? Well, inside the Config Manager console, there is a dashboard, the client data sources dashboard, and it shows you a couple charts based on an individual boundary group. It doesn't show an all-up picture of all of your environment, and you can't drill through, so this is it. But I'm going to talk through what's happening on the client side to make this stuff all show up here, what we're seeing from the clients, where that all is coming from. Additionally, you'll notice that there is no delivery optimization server listed, but when you enable the connected cache, it becomes a potential source. So if a client is pulling from the server and not from Microsoft or not from a peer, it would list DO server as a thing. I've yet to be able to get a client to do that, so it still could be something that's coming. Also, there is some hidden features. Don't do this. I hacked some of the console HTML and JavaScript files to take a peek. I was just trying to figure out where everything was coming from and how these charts were built, and I discovered these things. And so these are commented out in the HTML So don't do this, but, and this is fake. I totally faked the data to make this show up in here. But this is potentially what we're going to see. So it's kind of cool. We might even see if the clients are pulling content from, or see the content that clients pull from their management points. So see their client policy data, client settings data, all that sort of stuff that's coming from management point. So that looks like that could be coming in the pipeline. I don't know. Okay, so let me jump back over to here and I'll do some demoing around. So first, let's check on our MCC server. Okay, so I should have shown you the before and after here, but what we have is we have a new folder that gets created on the D drive of that server called Doink, and we actually have some content that's already been created. And so if we go back out to the SMSDP dollar share, there is a folder, MSDSPDOINC setup, and there's a Doink setup log. And if we open that with cmtrace, because it's pretty, hopefully it gives us a really great status at the end. All right, perfect. So the installation completed, the transcript stopped, and so I think we have a valid working delivery optimization server at this point, or Microsoft Connect to Cache server. So from here, where am I going? Okay, so I mentioned earlier that there's a magic SQL query that you can run to find out if your server is a Doink server. And so here it is. So there is a table called boundary group Doink servers. And if your device, if you've got a connected cache server assigned to a boundary group and your clients aren't pulling content from it, run this SQL and it will show you whether it won't show up here as a Doink server unless it has completed its configuration, is actually functioning. So that's a cool feature to have there, to be able to go dig into that. Okay, so we now have a Microsoft Connected Cache server. So just kind of wanted to at least show you that's it. That's all it takes to do it. There is a PowerShell command that you can run to force it to download content. So, and this is included on the Microsoft Docs page. So let's see if I can, I think this is fine. Control plus, show this. Let's see if everything cooperates with me here. There we go. All right, so if I run this, this is just simply telling it to use the connected cache server as the proxy to go out to the internet to go get a thing. And if we configure that server properly, it should go out and pull this GIF down for us. And this is just a command that's listed on the Microsoft Docs page for Microsoft Connected Cache under troubleshooting, and I'll have that in my slide deck at the end. So what's cool is, so now it worked. So if we remember this as the thing, and we know that this is the path, so this is the source location that we went to. If you go back to that Connected Cache server, sorry, I'm doing like 3 windows in here, Inception mode. Okay, so if we go into IIS on the Connected Cache server, we should be able to see the server farms that got generated, and I would expect that we're going to see a B1 farm, and when it's in progress and things, you can actually see it. You can come here and check. I wish there was a all-up view that you could see, but there's not. So I went a little faster. So I went to monitoring and management, and so I can see I had 1 total request from it, and I think that was the one that I just requested. And if we go drill into the server, we should see a B1 download, Microsoft contest, and then here's my GIF that I tried to download. So that's it. That's how you kind of validate that the server itself is working. And then from there, it's just about getting your clients to see it and use it moving forward. So I have a client here who let me see, I got two clients. This client has well, it's going to be this one. Sorry, I've got one set up as VPN and one not as VPN. Okay. So if we go in the registry, currently it doesn't have a DO cache host listed, but in the console, I have the boundary group configured for that device. Should be in the Houston bucket, and it should hopefully have the MCC server assigned to it. Yep. Okay, so a minute ago it didn't have the role, so now it has the role. So let's see if we can get it to pick this up. So we simply restart the config manager service on it. You wouldn't do this I mean, for real, this is just for testing to force this to quickly happen. So then you can watch the client logs. There will be I had a slide with the logs listed on it. So there is a Delta download log, which will show some entries, and then there's also a GPO log. We go here, DO GPO. I think it's DO GPO. I don't know why I struggle to find this particular one every time. Here we go. Come on. Okay, update DO GPO. Okay, so so when you do that, you should be able to watch the client updating its policy and see what its new settings are going to be. And so if we go into that registry entry, I hope it worked. Okay, so that's that's it. Pretty simple, really quick, easy test, easy way to know. And so now if I go and request content from this client, then so like if I went to the Windows Store or something, or did a pull down something that was advertised in Software Center to this client that was not hosted on a DP, it would attempt to go out to through the Microsoft Connected Cache server to pull that for us. While that one's loading, I'm not going to actually go through all that because it's just time consuming. So what you end up seeing is there is a command that is get delivery optimization status that you run, and there are several commandlets. So get delivery optimization log, analysis, per snap, and per snap this month, and status. And you can run these, and they all show kind of different bits of data that help you look at this. In fact, the config manager client is using these in the background to validate where they're pulling content from as well. So on this client, I can see that it pulled content from the Microsoft Connected Cache server during a previous test when it was connected to the other server. And so it tells me the host that it pulled from, and this is the source URL that it was trying to pull that content from. So if I went and looked on that server, I should be able to see this content sitting in it. Okay, so the client, so I can look at delivery, all the delivery optimization information here. Once again, I'll mention the 2Pint guys. Again, they have a bundle of scripts even that they've been using for proving this stuff out and testing things. So definitely go and check out. They've got lots of blogs and resources on this. I've been trying to put together all this stuff for a blog, so I don't have this yet. I don't have anything written up about this yet, so this is it. I'm live blogging right now. Hope you guys are writing it down. Okay, so I think I've showed you how that all works. Let me go back to my slide deck for a second. Okay, so, I didn't even get into I went over here for Power BI and got distracted by client stuff. How am I doing on time? I think I'm okay, right? Okay. Okay, so I have 2 copies of this report. It is come on, re-render, please. So I wrote and published this report for, actually I built it internally, trying to do what we've been talking about, trying to validate client data sources. and just kept digging and digging and said, well, I can put this in Power BI and let's do some stuff. So I started out trying to rebuild the console version of it, and then continued on just for troubleshooting to dig into some things. And so I've released it through System Center Dudes. It's on their website. It's free. Go get it, use it, enhance it, do whatever you want to it. Just use it, because I think it's amazing and powerful and shows all sorts of magical things. So I'm not trying to sell the report to you because it's free, but I think it's useful, so I'm going to use it as a tool to demonstrate the information. So so one of the features that it has is that it has a boundary group type option. So I've got my clients separated into VPN and business network based on their boundary groups that they're assigned to. And one of the things that we discovered was, okay, cool, I've got my VPN pulling. So this is our 1809 or 1909 feature update content. So that's 6 terabytes of data that has been pulled in the last month for that over Microsoft Update, while for my VPN clients. And that's pretty awesome. That's 6 terabytes of data that did not come over the VPN hairpinning backend. And then there's another gig, almost another terabyte of update content, Microsoft, just regular Windows updates that have come from that. But what I noticed was, well, hey, I've got a pile of machines that seem to be pulling content from distribution points, and that doesn't seem desirable. I wonder what that's all about. Well, what's cool is I'll show you some of the features of the report that you can look at. So you can click through here on the content source per day by type, and this will show you the number of clients by type, by the source that they went to, and then the red line shows you the total amount of content. So like on this day, we pulled 1.5 terabytes of data, and I think that's the day our feature update went live. But almost all of that content pulled from Microsoft Update. And then this next one allows us to dig even further into the data, all the way down to the file level of the content that was downloaded. And so from here, I said, well, okay, I want to figure out why I have clients that are pulling content from Microsoft, or from the boundary group, or messing it up, from the distribution point, when they really should be pulling it from Microsoft Update. And so let's see if we can just find a random one. I didn't precede any of this. Okay, so here's a great example. So, sorry. So there's a device here that has some content. So all of these entries here share the same content ID. So I know that these were all, this is all the same files, but it pulled 5 megabytes from a distribution point and then pulled all the rest from Microsoft Update. So in this case, we were able to, it doesn't necessarily mean this is exactly what happens every single time, but for us with this particular instance, I looked and found that the device was, they were switching content sources midway through a download, but they weren't switching locations. And I reported it to the product group, and the dev said, oh yeah, we think that's a bug. And I think they were already even aware of it and were working on it. But what I'm seeing on this one as I look at it is, well, it appears to be a member of 2 boundary groups. And I bet those 2 boundary groups have different configurations on them potentially. And so the device may have gotten mixed up on where it needed to go. So yet another reason why overlapping boundaries may be problematic. I had another instance where someone who was using the report had some questions and said, hey, why is this, why am I seeing strange behavior here? And we discovered that they also had overlapping boundaries. And the problem with that, at least as far as this is concerned, is when a client reports their data, and I'll show you a sample of what that data looks like here. So when they report their data, they collect it all into this XML format, and then this gets uploaded as part of one of their state messages that goes up. And it tells you the bytes per ID, per content ID that was downloaded and from where. So this is from the DP, this is from a peer, this is from Windows Update, and then this is from the Cloud Management Gateway, from branch cache, and then you'd see an entry for DO cache server if it was pulling from the server. So what would happen is that it knows what boundary groups it's a member of whenever it's doing that download. And so it knows the group ID or groups, multiple groups. And if it has multiple groups, it's going to report this data per boundary group. So you end up with multiple entries per client on the content that's being reported back. So you want to make sure your clients are in single boundary groups. You can also see that it lists the Doink server that the client also was assigned to as part of that download. So I'm going to do a hacky thing with that. So I mentioned that don't do this, do not do this, do not do this. This was just for test purposes. Mentioned the Doink server entry wasn't showing up. So what I did is I took that XML file and I found the stored procedure that that it uses to report that data, and I was able to inject the I took an XML that was already there and I resent it, but changed one of the entries to see if I could make it update. And sure enough, this is my lab report. And you see now I have DO server as an entry. So so eventually when the clients do start reporting that, hopefully, maybe I'd be interested to know if anybody's environments actually are reporting this out, because I'm not seeing it in all of my testing with this. And an easy way to test that is you could run a query like this. So this is just looking at an individual site or device. So this is looking at the client download history. This is the entry, the table where that XML file actually gets written to, and you'll see all the entries that we were just looking at in the XML. And so if you see a download type of 7, under this column, the distribution point type of a 7, that should be a DO cache server, and I just don't see those in my testing. But anyway, I'm purposely getting in the weeds here because that's what I've been doing with it. So the point being on the Power BI is that trying to weaponize your data, trying to make it useful for you, trying to make it so that we can, I'm building it for me and saying, well, hey, I need to share it with folks because it's helpful. But being able to see a picture and I quickly identify an anomaly, because if I switch this to VPN and I see anything that's not a cloud distribution point or Microsoft update, with the way that I've got my boundary groups configured, anything else is an anomaly. Let me go look at the clients and figure out what's going on. Is it something broken? Especially if you see a large amount of that. But like, we've made some changes in our environment, and I think as the clients checked in and got new policies, I think we've seen less and less of those occurrences happening. Whenever I first reported it, I had like 200 and something devices that were having the issue, but that was on fastering, and we got the hot fix, and I think the issues, we saw less and less of the issues. Point being, the data is here. It's just being able to tap into it. And it kind of goes back to what David was saying earlier about, this is a difficult data set to mine and to figure out who needs what and to be able to expose it, because it really is complex. This takes a lot of digging and a lot of poking around to find the things. I do have some of these queries and stuff published onto my GitHub, so those will be part of the slide deck as well, if you want to take a look at those things. So in the slides, I knew I had the logs listed somewhere. Here they are. So here are some of the places that you can go and look on the client as well to see the things. So you can watch it live in these logs as things go. If you enable debug logging on the client, you can see that XML show up in the content transfer manager as well as the state manager logs. Then you can also see the entries in WMI on the client. So if I go back, sorry, I don't mean to be toggling so much, but here we go. So I have WMI Explorer running and remotely connected to those devices. Should be running. Where are we at? Okay, so this is one of the devices. And so WMI Explorer, if you don't use this, you should use this. I use it almost daily. Vinay from the support team, the config manager support team, wrote this years and years ago, I believe, and it's just an amazing tool. So if you browse into the config manager class, you can find our namespace. There are a couple of classes that you can look at. So Content Transfer Manager is going to be the one that's going to show you your delivery optimization usage and download history for that client. So if you go in here, you can see the entries. So I can see it pulled particular information it pulled content from peers or pulled it from Microsoft and things like that. So you get to see some of that info here, but then you can also see the full download history, and it'll tell you the source for each of those entries. So you do on the client side have a nice record of information, but this also gets reported up as part of those state messages as the client is processing the data. There's also the data transfer service log. I haven't been able to prove it, but I believe that these logs, these entries, as well as some of the ones in the Content Transfer Manager, maybe potentially get entries created as jobs are being created and as they're running, and not necessarily historically recorded here. But so the DO usage and download history definitely seem to have some good data there to poke at. So highly recommend those. And then if you want to see the last state message that was sent related to, actually you can see all your state message stuff here, but the event ID 7202 will pull you the state message, and then this is where you can pull that XML file that we were looking at. You can also query that directly on a client. So if you were to pull up in PowerShell, this is also included in the repo. So there's just a quick PowerShell script to run on a client where you can dump that WMI information out and read this information in as well. So in the slide deck, I've got more details and pictures of what to expect to see there. So I know I went really, really fast. I was really worried I'm going to run out of time, and I think I'm right there on target. So thank you, COVID-19. We couldn't have done it without you. And I've got links. I'll probably add a couple more before we upload this. But I'll do Q&A or whatever, or let you have the rest of your day back. So Donnie or whoever. Hello. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Stick around. I think there's a raffle too.
Donnie will be on just a second to ask you some questions. There are quite a few in the queue.
There are, and I am. All right, let me go back here. So Adam, I think you touched on it very briefly, but overlapping boundaries.
Yes.
Why bad?
Oh yeah, that's a good one, because I had planned to discuss that one in a little bit more depth. Okay, so we had this in our environment where we somehow were using a root boundary group with all of our site system servers in it. So we did something like this where we put all of our DPs in there, and then we just had everything sitting in them. That's not the right one. It would be a regular boundary group. That's the default one. So we had all of them in there, but we didn't have any. Didn't have it configured to hold content or anything. We just had it for site assignment. And what would happen is all the devices would end up in that boundary group. And there's an option here that is a allow peer downloads over boundary group. I mentioned that delivery optimization, we thought we had it enabled, but we didn't. So the default group that all machines were piling into had this box unchecked, which is the more restrictive policy for the client. And then we set our other boundary groups to enable this. And we said, wait, why aren't our clients seeing, why isn't DO working? Why aren't they peering? Why aren't they sharing? Well, it's because the client was getting two settings policies for this setting, and the more restrictive one, which is don't allow it, was winning. So things like that can happen, or where so I mean, it's conflicting policies, conflicting references. You're pointing machines to different places. Geographically, you could have issues where you've got clients that'll pull from a server sitting across the country because you've got it in two geographically different locations, things like that. I think Jason probably is the king of overlapping boundary group information, but that's my interpretation of why that's bad.
Well, DJams is threatening to talk to you later about it because they're not all that bad, but I'll let you guys hash that out later.
See, I don't know. I'm figuring it out still. I'm still a newbie at this.
No worries. Just giving you crap. Okay, next question. Someone asked, if they only have one on-prem DP, would you recommend them spinning up an additional DP for connected cache, or just run it from the existing one?
Personally, I mean, I spun it up a second one in the lab just for demo purposes, but I don't see why you wouldn't run it on the same. I don't know of any reason why not.
Okay.
Disk space or else, but yeah.
I just wanted to, this isn't a question specific for you, Adam, but it's being asked several times, I think, because we're getting towards the end of the presentation. This is being recorded, and the recording we will make available later. If you signed up through the Eventbrite, we've got your contact information, and we'll make sure that we get it over to you. Let me look for another one here for you. Yeah, just some comments that your presentation brought out. David pointed out that the pandemic's actually been very good for Teams deployment. If you had a project that was maybe stalled, I highly doubt that it's stalled now. Let's see what else. Okay, I think we're wrapping up on the questions there. There might be a few more that you might want to go through, Adam, but we'll take a look at those. And I think that we're ready to turn it over to Stephen. Is that going to be you?
Oh yeah, I'm reading David's comments now. Sorry, David. Yeah, I've just been going by what Jason keeps telling me, so I don't know on the boundary groups. But yeah, I'll jump in the comments and try to dig through some of that as well. So thank you guys. Thank you everyone for sticking around. It's been a blast.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. We appreciate you taking the time and presenting today. Everybody needs to give Adam a little bit of thanks. He's our only non-Microsoft speaker today. So it was very brave, especially after going after Brad. That's some big shoes to fill. So,
and okay, seriously, if you need me, hit me up on Twitter @AdamGrossTX. I'd be happy to help any way I can.
Excellent. Thanks, man.